Okay, so good morning, everybody. You're with Lachlan, Kalache. You did miss great music, but unfortunately, Jen, everyone did because of some sort of technical issue that I've got going on. I hope you don't have it, but a lot of my systems, including Zoom, seem to be running incredibly slowly. And so no one got to listen to the amazing tunes that I was listening to. You'll just have to take my word for it. Okay, so look, today's session is called the Learning and Teaching Special edition of Zoom, where we look particularly at the application of the tool for strategies for student engagement. And next week will be, again, Jen, I'm sure. Today's session really is, even though we have a number of suggested items that we put in front of you and take you through things, I do want you to feel absolutely free to pull us up at any time and ask questions that are more pressing for you regarding the use of Zoom, because the tool changes constantly. There are updates coming out what seems like almost daily at the moment that have an impact on how we teach with the tool. So with that in mind, our suggested itinerary for today is I'll firstly open the floor for some feedback or questions around the use of the Zoom LTI tool, the integration in Blackboard, and how people are going with that if they have questions around its use. We will have a look at breakouts and do an activity session together using breakout rooms, whilst at the same time looking at some audience engagement tools that you might like to think about using in your own delivery. And they are Mentimeter, WooClap, and we even touch on Padlet a little bit as well. Talking about the idea of collaborative workspaces, we will be working within a collaborative workspace within Google Sheets. And then time depending, we will have an opportunity to discuss things like pre and post meeting strategies and how they connect to the rest of the teaching and learning events in a week of learning, a week of teaching. So I've dropped the link in the chat pod a minute ago for those of you wanting putting your name in there for who's here for the session, and to provide some feedback afterwards if you're so inclined. But what I'm going to do now is just actually give you the slides for this week so you can open them up on your own machines as well. And that way, certainly some of the links that are in here, you might want to go back and look at those at another point after the meeting. So it is being recorded. It will go into the Professional Learning Hub, into the YouTube channel there, but the actual artifacts for the session you'll be able to get throughout. First question before we kick in is, are you up to date with Zoom? And the reason that I've asked this both last week and this week is because Zoom has released 3 updates in the past fortnight, which is quite exhausting in a way, trying to keep up with them. But particularly the one that's been released this morning is very important, 586, because it has an automatic update feature, which means I no longer have to remind you to update. Basically, is that once you've got this turned on and you decide whether you want to have the newest update as soon as it's available, installed and available, or if you would like, basically it's 2 versions behind. The slow option, which allows, it will still automatically update your version of Zoom without you having to manually go and check constantly. So a reminder about how that is done: if you open the Zoom desktop application on your computer, and you might be familiar with this screen, go up to your profile image in the top right-hand corner, left click once, and then go down to check for updates, and you will see what version you're on if there's a new version available. What we're aiming for is version 586, because once you have installed that, you'll get this message that says you're up to date. And now we have an option to automatically keep Zoom up to date, either in the slow version or the fast version, as I mentioned. So that at least will bring some relief to those of us needing to check constantly in on this space. So by all means, feel free to do that, but you won't be able to run the update until after our session. Okay, today's session, we are going to be looking at breakout rooms, engagement tools, and collaborative workspaces, with the focus being on engagement. And we have a bit of an activity that underpins this, and the activity basically we'll be using a collaborative Google Sheet for everyone to put information into. We'll be looking at 3 audience engagement tools, and information about those tools from the different groups that you're in will be put into that sheet. So essentially, it's a bit of an exercise where we're simulating something we might give to students to do, where we want them to not only be in groups, but to meet back together periodically to provide feedback and to collect evidence in some fashion. So we're going to go through the process of creating those rooms now, launching that. On the next slide, slide 6, we actually have the links for all of those different areas. So again, from the PDF I've given you, you can access those if you lose track of them, but I will keep adding them to the chat pod as we need them. So the first one I'm going to drop in is the Google Sheet link, the master for our groups to provide their feedback on, and it looks like this: Zoom Learning and Teaching Audience Engagement Activity. And you will see that there are 3 columns for groups 1, 2, and 3, which means I'm going to be creating 3 breakout rooms. And that as part of this activity, firstly, our groups will need to appoint who's going to be taking the notes and who's going to be speaking back to the group when we need to do that. You'll need to decide on a name for your group. And then each time we look at an audience engagement tool, we have 3 questions to respond to. Was everyone able to do it? What was the consensus? Was it engaging or not? This is probably very, very simplistic, but just for the purpose of the activity. And also potentially to drop some notes into these cells about whether or not the experience was positive or negative, any feedback on that front. So we have Mentimeter, we have WooClap, and we have Padlet activities to look at. And we are going to fly through each of these where we get into our groups. We have an opportunity to provide feedback briefly. It'll only be 1 or 2 minutes each time. And then we will keep coming back together. So I'm going to keep launching that from our Zoom room until we've all got very, very familiar with the Zoom breakout interface. So I'm going to go through that process now of creating the 3 breakout rooms. So myself as the host, I can see the breakout rooms button. I'm going to click on that. I want to have 3 breakout rooms. I want to assign all of my participants automatically to my breakout rooms, and it tells me down the bottom that will mean that there's 4 in each. Click on create. I'm now in the second stage of breakout room creation, which is called edit. The first part is create. Now we're in edit, so I can make changes to those groups. I can rename them if I want to. I can move people around. I can add additional rooms. I can also fiddle with some options for how breakouts are going to work. Allow participants to choose. No, they're automatically going to be done. Do I want to move them once I launch the breakout rooms, move them into those? Absolutely. The rooms will close automatically after 5 minutes. I will probably make this even shorter and say 3 minutes. I don't need to be notified when time's up. It's going to be pretty obvious. And a countdown after closing the breakout room for the participants, I'll leave that at 30 seconds, but essentially that will give you an opportunity to collect your last thoughts, etc., before the room closes. And I can see Kath Attree has her hand up.
Sorry, I just want to know if you can put more than 4 people in a breakout room.
Yep, so you could manually allocate participants rather than automatically allocate. So,
okay, so you have to choose the manual one.
Yeah, so in that first kind of option in creation, it's one of the options is letting people choose themselves, and the other one is manually allocate. And if you choose manually, then you can absolutely decide who goes into which one.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and you can see that I have the opportunity here. For example, if I was going to take yourself, where can I find you here? Kath Attree, I can move you to group 1, and that will manually override that automatic provisioning anyway.
Right. So in some ways it might be easier just to do the auto and then like take the last group and redistribute them or something.
If you need to, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to move you back just so I can keep those relatively even for the moment.
Joanne has a question there too for you.
Absolutely. What have we got here? Can you share the slides so that participants can still see them when they go into a breakout room? That's a really good question. There is a facility for a host to share documents or slides into all the breakout rooms. I want to say it's a little buggy because only the main host can do it from the main forum. So you can't talk to anyone from there. But yes, you can share to the breakout rooms. I'll show you how it's done. I suppose it will be in the recording because you'll be in your breakout rooms when I launch it. Actually, I can turn off this option. Instead of moving you into all of your breakout rooms, if I turn that off, you'll all stay here with me when I launch them, and I'll show you how it's done. How about that? Okay, so if I go to open all the breakout rooms, right, and it said they've all been invited to join, but now if I've got a file that I want to share to the breakout rooms, I just have to remind myself how to do this. Rather than broadcast a message to everyone, that's just a text message that goes to the rooms. I think it's down in the chat pod. If I was to share a file, no, it's not there. Let me have a look. Let me grab a file from my computer anyway. I'll put it in the chat. Downloads, anywhere. Desktop. Libraries. Nope. This PC. Let's try that. Downloads. Okay, so there's a slide. I can put that into the chat. What else can I do with it? 3 dots next to it. I can either open it or find it in the folder. Nope, that's not doing it. I'm going to have to look it up and remind myself how to do that, that function, Joanne. I'm sorry. I've done it before. It was a little while back, so I'll find it and then get back to you, okay? No problem. All right, at this point, I'll get everyone to join their breakout rooms. Maybe I'll close the rooms, turn on the automatic option to move everyone in. Yep. And now I'm going to relaunch them again. Okay, so what we can see now is everybody's disappearing and moving in there. Joanne has gone as well. Complete the name of the group and identify your note taker, spokesperson. And what I'll do now is I'll grab the link to this Google Sheet and broadcast that again. And now I'm going to start jumping in to the different rooms just to show that I can do that as the host. Welcome back, everyone. interesting feature to point out to all of you. Breakout rooms, when you launch them and when you close them, operate with the same settings, the same default settings that you have on your normal meetings. And what I'm talking about particularly is things like camera and microphone off. So if your default setup for having for launching a new meeting is that everyone has their camera and their microphone off, when you launch breakouts, it will reinstate that message. Everyone's mic will be off. Everyone's camera will be off. And when you close the breakouts and come back together into the main room, all of your cameras will be off. All of your microphones will be off. It will reinstate that same new meeting default setting, if that makes sense. So for myself, for example, when you all rejoined this main room and I closed the breakouts, my mic was off, my camera was off. So it's you have to kind of remember that those default settings apply when you open and close breakouts. It acts like a whole new meeting has happened. Okay, now I can see even in that first little run where we wanted to just identify names for our groups and our spokespeople, we generally seem to get the hang of just that part, but some people were already thinking, what are we doing with Mentimeter? What's happening now? Are we just going to have a look at it ourselves? So this really reinforces the importance of having very clear instructions when you are running activities with students, for example, with anybody. I've just got someone in the waiting room. Okay. You have to have clear instructions, absolutely transparent, explicit, clear instructions, and you're probably still going to need to scaffold each of those activities, etc., before we get into them. So let's do that. Specifically, what's going to happen is that we are going to take each of these audience engagement tools and look at them together as a big group. So we're going to have a look at Mentimeter now, everybody all together in the main room. And then we will relaunch the breakout groups and we will collect our feedback from our group. And then we will be able to come back together and have a look at the feedback, and spokesperson for the group will be able to provide that feedback. Okay. There's a comment in the chat there, Joanne, about sharing in the breakout rooms. It's a good point to raise at this point in time. When you launch breakouts, every participant in the breakout rooms becomes a co-host. So your level of permissions, etc., in Zoom, when you launch breakouts, all of your students, anyone in the breakout becomes a co-host, which means you can share, turn your mics on, cameras on, etc. Everyone becomes a co-host.
That's not what happened though, Lachlan.
You weren't able to share?
No.
All right, I'll have a look at my security settings. It says allow participants to co-host should be able to share. That's very strange. Kathy, if I make you a co-host for just 1 second, can you tell me if you're able to share in this room with us?
No.
At the moment you can't?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, so you're not a co-host yet. Hang on.
Okay.
Now you're a co-host. Try and share your screen.
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, but it didn't let you do it in the breakout rooms.
No, because both Joe and I tried.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that when we launch the breakouts again. Thank you for looking at that. All right, so I'll share that screen and we're going to have a look at Mentimeter together. So the first link I'm going to give you is for everyone to vote with Mentimeter. I've got a voting link, which I'm going to drop into the chat pod right there. If you could click on that voting link, it's going to open up what's called a voting portal, which looks like this. And you as the audience have been asked, it's omelette time. What are you putting into your omelettes? And you get to put in 3 responses. And myself as the host have access to the output window, or the results, if you will, and I'm going to share those with the rest of you whilst those results are going in, because Mentimeter will update live in real time. So as the results are coming in, we can see people have put in ham, cheese, tomato, mushrooms, egg, spinach. It's a word cloud. It is readjusting on the spot. It's quite dynamic. And you can see true to word cloud form, the more common responses get larger fonts, larger text, and it will just keep readjusting. Mentimeter has probably about 14 different activity types, All of them can be run live, but we'll keep updating as more and more results are put into them. They can also be embedded within subject sites, etc., so that you can have students using them. So they're not just for live meetings. At the moment, what I can see down the bottom here is that 6 people have completed it. Now it's 7, so you can keep tabs on the number of responses. There's also a Q&A type function, this little speech bubble. I find it incredibly annoying. You might not, but it allows people participating in the activity to drop comments in there if someone's watching that, so to moderate it. So we can see in that word cloud, also there is a cover image, which is currently turned off, but I can turn it on as the host. And that essentially acts as like a reveal. So if you have this on and hide everyone's responses, they're still updating live. And then you can turn around and say, right, what's everyone put for this activity? And there we go. And then you can reveal it, for example. So that's our first Mentimeter activity. Let's see if I can't progress our Mentimeter activity onto a second form. We've had a look at one form, which was a word cloud. Myself as the host, I'm not having much luck with technology today, I have to say. Here we go. All right, now I have moved my results window onto the next Mentimeter activity. If you click on your link again for your voting portal, I will drop it into the chat again for you if you need it. This time round, we have an activity which is asking you to engage with a picture of some description, or is it still bringing up the omelette? I wonder.
It's got the map.
It's got the map. Brilliant.
I've got the map. Yeah. I went next question.
So you needed to do that as the participant. So it's not showing for me because I haven't put anything in for the first one. So that's good to know. So I want cheese, I want ham, I want tomatoes. So I've done my first activity in Menti. Once I submit that, then I get to the next question prompt, but it won't let me go to it without finishing the first one. And then I get the map asking me to drag the pins somewhere. Very small map. Can I zoom? I could probably zoom my browser in, I guess, if I wanted to get in a bit closer, but still then the pin's getting massive. Okay, well, I've dragged my pin, I've hit submit. If we have a look at our results from our audience, I can see some people have put in things like Antarctica, Indonesia, parts of Australia, Scandinavia, etc. So I can see again, 6 people have managed to complete this activity. I would say straight from the outset, just from what we're looking at, that this one is a little harder to engage with, possibly to do with the size of the image, the fact that the activity didn't start straight away, all those bits and pieces. We're just getting a glance at what this activity looks like. 9 people have finished. No trouble for me is a comment in the Q&A. Thank you, whoever's putting that in. Probably a wise decision considering the state of the world right at the moment. Okay, I am going to take us back now and launch our breakout rooms again so that we can collect our feedback on the first activity. All right, so I'm going to launch all the breakout rooms again. Here we go. Prasad, I will drop you into a group assigned to room 1. I'm going to broadcast a message to everybody from this main room. 2 minutes. And bring up the spreadsheet so I can actually see what everyone is putting into their Mentimeter feedback. We'll reiterate that only, Menti feedback only. I can also put in, double click within the cell. Type responses and Control Enter to go down if you need. Now I'm going to start joining the groups. Okay, everybody's coming back into the room again.
Could I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
And I know that at least Wendy Olson will nod along with this one probably. We're in the School of Policing Studies, and we are sometimes restricted to, what tools we can use. And you're using Mentimeter, and it looks like a really handy and useful tool. And I just wonder whether that would be an approved tool, and how do we go about determining whether that's an approved tool for our schools?
Okay, that's a really good question and timely. In terms of audience engagement tools, the university only has one at the moment that is that we have a license that's being arranged for it right now, and that is Mentimeter. So it's gone through a risk assessment process, obviously, where they look at where the data has been stored and whether or not having the tool on board creates any risks for the institution. And there will be an enterprise license for all staff available for Mentimeter inside the next fortnight. And I'll be sending out some information to all the staff about how to access that. But basically, the tool itself, Mentimeter, it is accessible to everyone already via a free account. The limitation being how many consecutive activities you can have in a row. So before, when we used Menti, we had 2 activities. That's the limit that you can have on a free account. So you could create 1,000 separate individual activities, no problem, under a free account, but you can't, sorry, we'll just reject that call. You can't have more than 2 in a row until that enterprise license comes into effect in a couple of weeks. At that point, you can make as many as you like.
Lachlan, did we not have a license as well for Padlet, or do we not have that anymore?
No, Padlet we do. It's Padlet's basically, we'll have a look at that as our third one, Katrina, I guess, as our third tool. We have an enterprise license for Padlet, which is a bulletin board software, collaborative workspace. It's not really flagged as an audience engagement tool in the same way with live audiences that Mentimeter is. So they sort of have different use cases, but Padlet and Mentimeter are the 2 that we have on board. So without further ado, I'm aware of time getting away from me, as it always does. Do we have another question there?
Sorry, just quickly.
Go.
This poll everywhere, is that okay, or should I switch to Mentimeter?
I'd use Mentimeter myself. Poll everywhere, we don't have a license for at the university. Yeah.
Okay.
And there are, to be honest, there is a list of tools where people have sort of started using them over the years, and they went through a process called the New Learning Technology Approvals Process, which was a very brief risk assessment to make sure they wouldn't destroy things. But apart from that, there's no support for them at the institution. Yeah.
Sorry, Lachlan, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
If the students can only advance by hitting next question,
yep,
and they don't answer a question,
yep,
you've lost them.
Yeah, so Different use cases, I guess, for the way Menti is used. Personally, when I use this tool, I normally create an individual activity with one link by itself. I don't usually use consecutive activities. Yeah, I find it a little bit harder to keep track of it. That's really with a live sort of presenter in mind. So imagine kind of your motivational speaker or, you know, sage on the stage type person running the activity sequence with their audience and only progressing it when they're ready to, all that kind of stuff. I'm more comfortable having them separate as individual activities.
And so then does that work differently than if you embed it into the Interact site?
When you embed a Menti activity, the audience gets access to the voting portal. So you'll provide a link as well. They click on that to vote, and all they can see with what's embedded is the results as they come in. So after they've voted, they'll see their own input updating the embedded results window.
But they can then progress, so they can just do it at their own speed.
If you were going to use consecutive activities like that, yes. Yeah, we run a separate session as well later on audience engagement platforms where I go through the back end of Mentimeter and Padlet as well. So I'm happy to go through those things at that point. Just in terms of your feedback from your groups, folks, can I have the spokesperson for group 1 tell me a little bit about your feedback about Mentimeter?
That's you, Stuart.
You're used to it?
No, I said it's Stuart, sorry.
Oh, right.
Trying to get back to there. Okay. Did everyone in the group do the activity? Yes, we did. What was the general consensus, engaging or not? The jury's still out, basically, which is fair enough because we didn't examine every aspect. If students don't answer a question, are they excluded from the activity? Helen just raised that issue. If tech is slow, you might get behind. So again, if you had multiple, if you had one exercise but multiple questions, and that could be an issue. But Lachlan, you've given the answer for that. And we just have to be aware of the limitations. So that was our summary. And I guess following up what Kath said, if you use poll everywhere, can you actually use the Mentimeter in the exact same way without, loss of what you had before?
Loss of what? Oh, right. Okay. So the experience that you had through poll everywhere, whether or not something would be lost in moving across to Mentimeter.
Correct.
Okay. Now I'm with you. Yeah. Okay. All good questions. Group 2, Abhishek.
Hi, Lachlan. I think the group felt that it was really interesting and engaging, and its capabilities are nice. However, we also felt that it requires a much sort of pre-preparation beforehand rather than using it as something at random or something, because every subject is different and it will require some kind of preparation beforehand by the lecturer, and rather than using it in an ad hoc way, we can use it systematically across the term so that even students get used to these things. So that was it, given the 3 minutes. Absolutely.
And of course, there's an observation straight away is that the activity, if it doesn't have enough time, you can only expect so much in terms of the feedback, etc. But no, all great comments. And I absolutely agree with these tools. It's very, very difficult to be able to use them on the fly effectively. And I would argue potentially maybe something like the word cloud is something that you could get up and running in about 5 minutes if you needed to, just with a question, put it to the audience on the spot and have it as an icebreaker or something. But you're not going to have a particularly complex activity, obviously, or it might just give you an opportunity to segue between different parts of your delivery. So no, those are great observations. Kath Attree.
So one of our members had trouble accessing Mentimeter, progressing to the next slide, or next question, the map. But I guess the rest of us found it quite easy. I think they're quite engaging. Poll Everywhere does quite similar things, so I've been using that, and I love the work that that's a really great way to get people engaged around a topic. So yeah, but it seems like Mentimeter has a similar set of activities that you can incorporate into your PowerPoints, and it probably operates in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, there's going to be a whole lot of professional development around Mentimeter in the next couple of weeks, and we'll run it again next year as well before 30. And that's because we've got that enterprise license coming on board, and Mentimeter integration in Zoom is going to be turned on at CSU inside the next fortnight. And what that will mean is that you can run your Mentimeter activities from within your Zoom room without having to copy and paste links all the time to your audience and jumping between different screens. You'll actually get them inside the room as participants, and it will launch all the activities from within this environment, which makes driving a lot easier and makes the experience a bit more seamless for participants. They don't have to keep jumping in and out of different rooms and windows. So look out for an announcement on that front. All right, let's get straight into WooClap. I'm going to drop a link to the activity straight into the chat pod for you. WooClap is another audience engagement tool. So if you click on that link, I will open up the same link from my end and see what it does for you. Welcome back, Monique. I am hoping that you will also see this same Sesame Street screen opening up on your device.
We do institution login, Lachlan, or
institution login?
It's asking to sign with Facebook, Google.
Yeah, it's asking us to log in.
What about instead of logging in, I give you that link instead? Maybe it's trying from my account. Is that link that I've just provided with the code any better?
Yep, that's working.
Good to know. Okay, so all right, so WooClap is a different audience engagement platform. It's hosted in China. It also has a lot of different activity types that are not available in Mentimeter, for example, or in Poll Everywhere. Presents the information in a different way, but there are some concerns, obviously, about where the data is housed.
Sorry, that second one, that's not coming up as a link for me. I can see the web address, but it's not a clickable link.
Can you copy and paste it into your browser?
I can do that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why it hasn't done that. Maybe because if I put a HTTPS in front of it, maybe that'll do the job. Let's try that. Now we're talking.
Yeah, we've got it. Yeah.
All right, and I can see results coming in about our favorite Sesame Street characters at the moment. 3 votes. The number that's given next to it down in the bottom here refers to the number of people that have done this activity ever, rather than 79 of us right here, right now. But I've reset the results, so it's just got the number of votes coming up. Cookie Monster appears to be a clear favorite currently. But you can see that this allows you to combine image with a graph-like live updating sort of comparison.
You're not seeing your screen, Widget.
Not seeing my screen.
No.
It's a travesty. Hang on. What's going on there? Let's try that again. How about now?
Yes.
There we are.
I swear today I'm just bugged by gremlins. I do apologize. All right, so we've got 11 votes that have come in, which is not too bad out of 14. It's a pretty good engagement rate. Currently, we have a draw between Cookie Monster and The Count in terms of people's favorites. So look, that's one type of WooClap activity only. And I'm going to throw us into our breakout rooms again to grab some feedback on that so that we can still have a look at Padlet. So at this point, I'm going to open all of our breakout rooms again. You'll need to go back to your spreadsheet. I'll keep dropping all those links in so that if you've lost them, let's do that now. And as everyone is taken away, we have our link to our Google spreadsheet. WooClap feedback only. I'll keep providing this feedback to the groups and then start jumping in. And the question is, why was I not able, as the host, to share files to the different groups? I feel like I'm not seeing all of the options that I should, maybe because the breakout rooms are in progress, but really we should have been able to share files to breakout rooms. Okay, I can see. I'm going to broadcast a message, time's getting away. We'll send out the message, 1 minute. And I'll definitely have to look up why the sharing of files to breakout rooms is not working. It's definitely meant to. Maybe it's a sharing option. Ah, share to breakout room. I found it. So what I can do is find a file. Shares a screen, for example. So it'll allow you to share your screen to the breakout rooms. I'm now going to close all the rooms and bring everybody back together. And once it relaunches and everyone comes back in, my microphone will mute again. I'll get that message. So we've got 3, 2, 1. And here they all are. Welcome back, everybody. I appreciate that this is a absolute race at the moment, which is probably adding to the confusion and discomfort of people. I suppose take that on board as feedback. Not enough time for activities makes the audience less than happy. However, in that last little breakout time, I did find the option of how to share to the breakout rooms, which is great. And I'll show you that because it might be probably the more valuable thing that you learn from today. The way that it works is I'm going to turn off the options in our breakouts for automatically putting you in the room so that you can see where it is. Okay, so don't join the breakouts. I'm going to launch them for a second. Open all the rooms now. So effectively all the breakouts are going. If I move my Zoom screen across here so you can see what I'm doing. When we go now to the share option as the host, there is now an option visible down here at the bottom that says share to breakout rooms. Right now, if you check that, and you might be sharing a screen or an individual application window, it's not a file. So you can't share files to the breakout rooms. You can share your screens to all the breakout rooms, and it's done by clicking on this share to breakout room and share. And at that point, it broadcasts to all the breakout rooms live. So you might scroll through screens or do different things. They can't hear you. So it's going to be a slightly disembodied experience. However, that's how we do it. All right. So I'll get you all off that share screen and stop the breakout rooms, which are live. All right. Let's hear from our spokespeople. Group 1, Stuart, tell me about WordClap.
Yeah, we all did the activity. Again, the jury's still out. You need a bit more exploration, whether it's what is it for, what is its full potential. And what did we say? If students can customize their responses, it could be useful as a use it for reflective purposes. And the other thing is, if everybody starts to use the same tool, and Stuart McKinney is in 4 different subjects, is it going to get a bit blasé after I've seen it 4 times?
Yeah, right. Okay, so it's just not new or a surprise or engaging, perhaps, if everyone's doing exactly the same thing.
Yep. Mhm.
Perfectly valid feedback. Thank you, Stuart. Group 2, Abhishek.
Hi, Lachlan. We were unsure about the benefits of this tool at this point, because the activity was pretty basic. It was just pick and choose one photograph or vote for something. It needs to be thought out a bit further. However, it's a nice icebreaker, we felt. So the value of the tool obviously depends upon how we intend to use it in the context of our subject. So that's what we were up to.
Yeah, right. And look, the point that you made last time as well about the amount of time put into preparing the activity being important is also particularly valid. To get that activity with the Sesame Street characters, it meant that I needed to source, 14 images or something that were going to be appropriate for the activity. So not only think of what the activity is going to be, and knowing that it presents it in that kind of visual format with the different characters against each other and the graphs sort of going up, I then needed to find all those. So you're not doing that quickly.
Sure.
It's going to take more time. So
sorry, Lachlan, we just had a related question to that. How do we ensure that every time you create a breakup room, it's the same people that are allocated to the group and it's not a random allocation every time?
Yeah, right. So when you use that auto allocate option, when you create the rooms, it will be the same people every time. It only applies once until you close the breakouts altogether and you recreate a new set of breakouts. So remember, I talked about the 3 phases. So we have create, edit, and live. You can only change the way the group members are allocated in the create phase, in that first part when you're creating breakouts.
Okay.
So you're not going to have people not going back to the same groups unless you kill all the breakout rooms altogether and recreate them from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question. So you've got that recreate button that's visible there.
Can I just ask a further question on that one?
Go ahead.
So you can't. So oftentimes you'll have groups assigned and you want to continue the next day with the same groups. Is there any other way? Is there any way of automatically putting them back in those same groups from a previous day, or do you have to manually assign them?
You could leave the Zoom room open all night. That'd keep them there. That's the only way I could think of, basically. Yeah, because the breakout rooms will reset. But that's the only way I'm aware of. Otherwise, manually reallocating the same people to the same groups. Yeah, it's a good question, but it doesn't keep it after the meeting itself is closed.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right, group 3, Kath Attree.
So I guess we thought it was reasonably engaging. I think I'm always thinking of other uses. So, like from my perspective, I could put up pictures of, 4 different leaders, and that could actually engage conversation around why people thought, those particular leaders were good versus others. So I think it's actually a really good activity to engage conversation around whatever topic you're doing. And it was fun. And I've used, I don't know if you're aware, Lachlan, of the sheep scale that, I've used that for just as an icebreaker activity to engage the audience. So I think it's a relatable thing. And I guess I take Abby's point that it's about a balance of input. You have to think about how much time you want to allocate to that and how important it is. But if it does get your audience engaged and, on the journey with you, I think it's worthwhile investing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'll say it again. I completely appreciate that we're only looking at these in a very, very superficial way today and not looking at the variety of activity types and the way these things work and which ones might be the best. It's more, I suppose, demonstrating a number of things simultaneously, which might not be giving us enough information, but certainly that kind of image voting aspect is fairly common to most audience engagement platforms now. There's an option for them. Mentimeter has one, WooClap has one, and most other platforms that I've seen will have a way to combine image with voter choice as well. All right, I'm aware that we are almost at time. Of course we are. I'm going to launch the Padlet activity for us very quickly so that we can do this again. But I will point out that in the slides for today, which I'll keep adding to the chat, I've put links to different bits of information around Mentimeter and Padlet, etc. In the slide deck. There are cheat sheets, there are videos to take you through how to use these, and I will run the audience engagement tools workshop, which actually goes through the back end of building within these platforms. It might be in a fortnight, etc. Might be in the new year, I can't remember exactly, but we do run a specific workshop going through just those tools and how to build within them. But let's have a look at Padlet quickly. If I copy the link, thanks, Tim. And I will drop that link into the chat for everybody to have a look at. Padlet is one that's been available at the uni now for about 4 years. We do have an enterprise license for this tool. It creates a what's called a bulletin board, but basically a board that allows people to add posts. In this case, it has a format called the map format, which allows you to upload images or use their own maps, satellite maps in this instance, that you can zoom in and out of. It will update dynamically as each of the votes comes in, recentering. So at the moment, for example, I'm looking, one person has put their kind of pin somewhere. I'm assuming it's in Australia, for example.
Yeah,
but as
me, Lachlan, I didn't put a specific suburb or anything. I just put an area.
okay.
Yeah, if that's so. Can I ask a question while everybody does this activity, Lachlan? I really
Sure.
Whilst within a Zoom session, can I clear the chat? So I know that when I close my room and come back in, my chat gets cleared, but is there any way to clear it while I'm in? So what I've done this session is I've got 2 classes back to back. So I've got some exiting the room and some coming in, and I'd like to be able to clear the chat, but I haven't found out how to do that.
No, and you can't really, to be honest. Whilst you can save the chat, there's no way to clear it as such. The way that Zoom works is that in the Zoom meetings is that the chat's only visible to people from the time they enter the room. They can't see the history. So even though you might be able to see everything from the point you join the meeting, from the get-go, people that have just joined will only see things added to the chat after they join.
Good,
So
okay.
anything prior to that, they can't see.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and you can see as more people have added their input to this screen, the map has recentered. So far everybody's put places in Australia, for example, rather than the rest of the world, which makes sense. Clicking on the plus, as we do with Padlet, allows you to put in your own feedback. You can either drag a pin to your choice of location, or you could search for it. So if I did go offshore and said, take me to Munich, I get Munich, Germany, and I can put that in as my spot and hit publish. And at that point, the map recenters to include Germany as well. And someone else had that idea as well by the looks of things, so somewhere in Europe. Padlet boards are very diverse in the ways that they can be used. So don't take this as kind of gospel and this is all you can do with Padlet. Just one example, but I can see that we had a number of you already put your feedback in there. So look, let's clicking on each of the posts, the pins that people have added, they've put in their locations. The only way to provide feedback to the audience really from Padlet is via text, either in the instruction, for example, or adding your own post that might have text in it that goes on the board somewhere. Or if you've embedded the Padlet wall within your subject site, providing that instruction in the subject site somewhere. So look, one last time, let's launch those breakout rooms and grab Padlet feedback very, very quickly. I'll give you 1 minute for this and then we'll wrap. And now it's taking everybody in. I can see our numbers are dwindling. And I will actually share my screen again to the breakouts. Feedback on Padlet only. And we're getting closing the rooms. We'll bring everybody back. Welcome back, Jen. Yeah, it's muted you coming back into the room. Remember those default settings.
Have lots of questions when it's finished.
Absolutely.
And when you're finished,
if
you don't mind staying.
Yeah, not at all.
This has
been
really useful this morning.
I just have been a bit paranoid about trying to turn my camera back on, thinking it's going to crash Zoom again. So it's not that I don't want to look at people or them looking at me. It's I'm just a bit paranoid about Zoom today for some reason. See you, Katrina. I think she's already gone. But anyway, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. We had a lightning visit to Padlet and our groups and a chance to comment on that. Let's go back to front this time. Kath, do you want to talk about group 3 and what you had to say about Padlet?
Sure. So mixed response from our group, Lachlan. I have used it, so I find it okay for certain purposes. But the other two were fairly new to it, weren't unsure, but felt that obviously it would depend on the right situation. And I forgot a piece of feedback that we were going to say previously, just in terms of if you're running this activity again, what we thought might be useful is if you had a third column or another column on this Google sheet with the link in case people hadn't been able to get it in the chat.
Ah, perfect. Yes, I can do that. Yeah, look at this session is always hilarious in that we never have enough time. People want to spend more time in the platforms and get more information on each, and maybe it overreaches for sure. But thank you for that. Abhishek, would you like to talk about Group 2's feedback?
We were still trying to get the hang of it, and
sure.
Although others I think enjoyed it, I was a bit uncertain about the use of this activity. But it's a nice engagement tool again. I mean, again, depends on how you use it, and that's all I have for now. Probably others in my group can jump in.
Yeah. Look, I absolutely appreciate that, and I can say we do go into this in a lot more detail. But one of the most common uses I've seen of Padlet within subject sites with that map format is for students as part of an introductions type activity to point out where they are, for example, and to sort of almost a meet and greet. Used in different subject sites as part of a getting started type activity. Group 1, anyone from Group 1 like to talk about your feedback on Padlet?
You've just given the feedback.
Oh, okay.
It's been actually used by some staff for probably 4 or 5 years now. It's been around for a long time.
Yep.
But the only time I've really seen it used, not by myself personally, but used as an introductory thing, and often pre-session, like they'll put it up there and so students can start introducing themselves before the session even starts.
Absolutely.
Yep.
In the slides for today, which I'm going to add to the chat very quickly for you, for those of you wanting those before you leave. Further down the list, there is which slide is it in? Slide 8. There's actually a link to a Padlet wall where the instructors have actually used the Padlet wall to, this is called the timeline format, and it allows you to have a series of different posts within a sequence that might have videos or images, etc., along with text. And that's also quite a popular way of using the tool as well. So as I said, we do go into each of these tools in a lot more detail, but Padlet's used in a bunch of different ways. And look, I apologize again for the hiccups today, but each of the activities that we looked at, the breakout rooms themselves, the audience engagement tools, we have separate sessions where we go into each of them in more detail. But what we were trying to do today really was to throw you all into a collaborative workspace, so the Google Sheets, to keep launching, relaunching, and exploring the way breakout rooms are used. And I guess some of the things to look out for when using breakouts. We had a very, very brief look at 3 different tool types. And really, when there's more time involved, there are other areas that I like to look at as well, such as different strategies that you might like to implement before and after your online meetings to connect those experiences. Sometimes I even get a chance to talk about the Zoom mobile app a little bit and why students prefer to use that out and about and what that experience looks like. And also document cameras, where we have some people that specifically want to get into setting up document cameras at home. Of course, I haven't looked at any of those today, but I'm happy to hang around and chat to any of you about your own questions about any of today's session or anything else really. So thank you for sticking around. I'll stop the recording now, but I hope you have a great week and we'll see you at the next one.